Lesson 4, Ego and Soul, Discernment through the Heart Center. In the last few lessons, you began learning and connecting to your heart center as a portal to your deepest inner wisdom, truth, and a place to access connection to your spiritual guides or practice. And today I want to take that work a little deeper. And in this lesson, share with you how to discern between the two strongest inner forces that you live with every single day. The voice of the ego, that of survival, urgency, and often moves from a place of fear. And the voice of the soul, that is the voice of truth, love, surrender, and some cosmic knowing that it really can never be destroyed. And this lesson isn't about analyzing these parts with your mind, although I am going to invite you to be present with this lesson inside of your thinking mind, and at the same time, stay in that space of vision. Notice when I'm talking about the ego or the soul, if any imagery pops up in your mind, if you see something. Whenever we're thinking throughout the day or telling stories or we're coming up with something or an idea or we're being creative, we often are seeing visually. We just might not be as tapped in and tuned in because we're also present with the outside world. So stay present with your heart. You can take a minute to take a breath and breathe in and see that spiral and exhale and send that light. We did this in one of our last lessons. Begin to practice doing this with your eyes open, quickly. Part of what I teach is that you don't need soft music, a dark room, a mat, and a blindfold over your eyes to connect to yourself deeply and right away. Because as I've said many times, you're learning to walk between the worlds with more awareness and more creativity. So while the heart center does show you guides, symbols, and parts of your intuition, it's also going to reveal the parts of you that confuse you, that challenge you, that pull you away from yourself. In the other realm of your heart, I like to say the light, the dark, no difference. Every single part of you is welcome here. In fact, you will deeper come to know, understand, and work with the parts of you that feel challenging, scary, darker, shadowy, parts that you fear, lower vibrations of consciousness like anger, apathy, depression. Everything is going to be welcome here. What the heart center teaches is how to discern between a true felt sense intuition from the divine source that is you, and also from your human experience. And your human experience in the outer world is often led, more often than not, by the ego mind. And when we're talking about the ego, I want to invite you to not see the ego as something bad. It simply has a different agenda for your life. And when you come into this work and spiritual work, self-reflective work, wherever you are on your journey, you're typically trying to figure out the difference between your heart, what your soul wants, sacred purpose, intuition. You're wanting to tap into something more. While the ego was created here on the dream of the planet to help you survive, its agenda for you is always going to be survival. And this can be a brilliant part of the ego because inside of the need to survive is discernment, is remembering, is analyzation, it's predicting. But it can only work with what it already knows, already experiences. Its filing cabinet of the mind is very rigid. Whereas the heart center is going to work with a more universal truth and a deeper connection to something greater. The ego is typically always searching for meaning as well. And when it drives our lives, we can find ourselves in a lot of fear and feeling less than, in comparison, of feeling behind, of always striving. until I really deepened into my own spiritual journey from a more somatic place inside of my body and my vision. I wasn't even really fully aware that my ego had an agenda. I couldn't see, feel, and embody where I was constantly moving from. And in my own personal journey, it was fear. Fear was the ruler of my reality. My ego spent a lot of time moving me in my life from a place of fear. Now, you might find that your ego moves you from a different place. It is going to be part of your reflection this lesson to think about and to journal on what agenda does my ego have for my life, and what agenda does my soul have for my life. And journaling on this from the mind space is really powerful. In fact, it was that question that was given to me by one of my teachers. And what I did was, instead of journaling on it, I wanted to go into my great within and I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it and feel it and understand how these two forces were present in my life. So as a part of this teaching, I'm going to share with you what I saw, because whenever I share this story, it really helps the listener land deeper into how these forces might work for themselves, because that's how powerful imagery is. So when I took this question to my inner world, I wanted to see what my ego and my soul looked like and felt like. And so I closed my eyes and I go into my sacred space and into the clearing in the forest. And whenever there is a part of me I want to greater understand or see outside of me, I begin by bringing all of my attention and awareness into my body inside of my vision. And I breathe and I start to ask the question of my body, like, what does my ego feel like in my body? So I start with that felt sense. What does it feel like? For me, it was a lot of fear. So I would start to feel kind of the ego is a grasper. It's afraid. It's actually kind of manic. The more I started feeling into the energy of my ego, he was very chaotic. And he ended up being an archetype he, so that's what I'm sharing him as. But it was this very chaotic energy. And I keep breathing in the vision and I'm breathing that energy and I'm in a safe place so I can pull that energy up into my heart. I can pull that energy of the ego. I like to then see it as a color or a texture. And you've had some experience with this in the last journey that we did. I want to pull it in, color, texture, light. I want to call it forward as an energy in my body. Then I took a really big deep breath in, exhale, and I sent the ego out of my body. And every time I do this, or I walk someone through it, I ask you to say, show yourself to me. Show yourself to me. Deep breath in, exhale, ego, show yourself to me. Well, my ego looked like a Dementor from Harry Potter. He came flying out of my chest, flying into the landscape, flying all around quickly from one end to the other, like he didn't even know where he was going or what he was supposed to do. All he knew was he had a serious agenda, and that agenda was to protect me. That's what I felt. And so he was grabbing me and being like, this is what we have to do. And then we got to do this next, and don't wear that, and don't do that, and don't do save that. And it was like his whole agenda was to protect me because he wanted to survive. He wanted me to survive. And he could not discern anymore between life and death scenarios and situations that weren't life and death. So if I was in a car and another car pulled out in front of me and I'm driving and my body goes into fight, flight, freeze, that's survival. But then if I text somebody and didn't get a text back, or I taught something and didn't feel like I got the response I wanted, or whatever area of my life at the time I was feeling insecure, I would have that same experience. Fight, fright, freeze, flee, fix. My ego was seeing everything as survival. everything. I could feel it. I could see it in the way that he was moving around. And so I let him continue to fly around, and I come back to myself as I stand there, coming back into myself, placing my hands on my heart again, and then I start feeling into my soul. Really start feeling into that energy of expansion, spiritual connection. For me, it was this really expanded space of higher consciousness. I was feeling this energy that had no fear in it at all. It was simply excited to be alive, to experience all aspects of life. And it had this deep inner knowing that it couldn't be destroyed, that it was the energy of the universe, that it would never be destroyed. It was stardust. It was so much more than my mind could even comprehend. And I started breathing up that energy in my body and feeling it and seeing it as light and seeing it as a texture and a color. And I take a deep breath in and then I exhale and I send that spirit self, that soul self, out of my body. And my soul self is a she, and she was very ethereal, but no face, no human aspects to her. She was everything contained somehow in this ethereal clothing. And I saw her there with so much peace and so much ease, and she began to smile even though I couldn't really see her face. It was just this energy of like total ease. And when she looked over at the ego, even though she didn't have a face that I could see, she was smiling. Like she loved this part of me. She loved this part of me, this energy that moved me through the world. And then I heard a question, and this is one of the things when you start to practice going within, is you start to receive questions. And this is part of intuition, this is part of clairvoyance, and this is part of psychic connection, which is now scientifically proven. This all just has to do with energy. So we don't have to get too deep into that, but you start to hear questions, you start to see things for yourself. And I would get questions in the beginning, I still do get a lot of questions. And so the question that came up was, how is your ego dancing with your soul? Like my heart center wanted me to see them in a dance. That was the imagery that the heart wanted me to see, so my brain could have a shift of perception. So when that question was asked, suddenly my Dementor ego grabbed my soul and started flinging her around like they were on the dance floor of my life. He was so excited she was there, this life force, this spirit, this holy longing, like everything about my soul and spirit, my ego loved. And he was just flinging her around, like no time to breathe, just all over the place. And the message I got from that was my ego is leading my life. My ego is leading my life. And my soul is who I want to lead my life from now on. So in my vision, the question that I ask is, what would it look like if my soul was leading? And as soon as I asked that question, my ego and my soul stopped. My ego was staring right into the eyes of the soul. And the soul began to dance with the ego almost in like a waltz. There was an intention for every move and every step, and yet there was so much spaciousness. She was taking up the same amount of space, but her energy was coming from love. It wasn't coming from fear and anxiety. Her energy was curious and creative and just so happy and so much gratitude to be there. And as they were dancing in this way, and I could feel the energy change in my body, I came to understand in my body that when I was moving from a hypervigilant state or moving from fear, that I was letting the ego drive. And when I was moving from soul, I was moving more from this place of great mystery and exploration. And as I watched them dance, I knew that they were both going to forever be in my life. And this really interesting thing happened as I was watching them was suddenly I heard What would your ego do without your soul? And my soul disappeared from the field, and my ego dropped, like fell in on himself, almost like he had fallen asleep, like he was sad and he was depressed. And the message I got was that my life force is what gives life to my ego, not the other way around. My life force is what is truly in charge. And so I invited my soul back in, and this time the ego just intuitively knew, like, my soul is going to take the lead. That my intent is for the soul to take the lead, and I need you to learn how to dance. So setting this intention in my mind and in my body that I need you to learn how to let her lead. And you can take all of her holy longing and sacred purpose and the desires of her heart and her creativity and her channeling and all the things about her, but you can't move from fear and survival anymore. I don't need you to protect me. I want to live. I don't want to survive. And so I had this beautiful experience, this felt experience of really seeing and embodying the difference. And then how I would use my inner vision is that whenever I was in my day and I was moving through something, I felt a challenge, I felt fear, I felt worry, I didn't know what choice to make, typically feeling a little uncomfortable with myself, I would tune in and say, who's leading here? Like, what is my ego feeling about this situation? And what would it look like if I took it to my soul? And so I would, if I could, close my eyes and imagine bringing the situation or the person or the relationship into the field. How would my ego dance with this part of my life? How would my soul dance? But as I practiced, I got really good at keeping my eyes open. I got really good at feeling in my body the difference between my ego and my soul and how they would show up for these situations in my life. When you bring your outer world into your inner world and use your vision, it allows you to see what I call the river beneath the river. What is really happening under the surface of story? When a situation that you're in feels confusing, painful, overwhelming, or unclear, you can bring it into the heart center. You can ask it to show itself to you, and you will be surprised more often than not by what you see. It is a different sort of sight that you're tapping into that can be challenging when you're walking in your outer world. But the more you practice, the more you begin to see beyond the veil, not only of your experience, but of other people's experiences as well. Now, for this lesson, you have 3 different ways to inquire, and I would invite you to do all 3. The first one is to journal. What agenda does my ego have for my life right now? And then, what agenda does my soul have for my life right now? And just spend some time journaling, using the discernment of your mind and knowledge. The second thing I want you to do is take yourself on a journey of self-discovery, without the music, without the guidance, without maybe even a big drop-in. See if you can visually tune into the difference between your ego and your soul. And the third thing you can do, if you are really looking for guidance, as this practice might be brand new if you haven't meditated with me before, is I have a free track on Insight Timer called Ego versus the Soul, a Shamanic Journey. And that is the first recording of my channeled meditation that I myself went on, where I saw my ego and my soul dancing. And so I invite you to go on that journey with me as well. Whatever you decide, the invitation is to explore and to return again and again. And if you can feel deeply connected to your ego and soul as archetypes, as visual parts of self, then you can begin to bring your outer world into it. And so the second part of your homework, own work, is to bring something from your life into the field, to dance with the ego and the soul, and see what clarity you might receive from your inner vision. Have a wonderful journey, and I'll see you in the next lesson.